Hello, we welcome you all to the lecture series on electric and hybrid vehicle technologies presented from the Center of Excellence for Hybrid and Electric Vehicle, KPR Institute of Engineering Technology, Coimbatore. In the last lecture, we have looked upon one of the reasons to pivot from IC engine to electric vehicles, and we touched upon the very well known factor called as global warming. Let's take it down a notch and look at two more reasons before we talk about history of the R&D which went into the making of electric and hybrid vehicles. So today let's look at global warming, and today we'll be making little graphs for you to understand the scale of this issue, because I am very well aware. I believe that you guys know what global warming is. I just want to present some data in front of you so you understand the severity of this issue that we are facing. So for the textual knowledge, global warming is a result of a greenhouse effect. That means we have carbon dioxide below the ozone, and that traps the heat and does not allow the heat to move out and away from the earth, which results in a very warm zone near the earth, and that disturbs the entire ecological processes that occur on the earth's surface. So because of this, we have natural disasters are being occurring, and the global warming is believed to have induced meteorological phenomena such as El Nino. If those who are very smart in geography would have studied this, El Nino are the winds that flow which disturbs the South Pacific region and regularly causes tornadoes and inundations and dryness. Next we have, so let me write it down so that it's easy to recall later. We get, as an effect of this, we get natural disasters, tornadoes at some place, floods at the other, drought at the complete other end of the spectrum, etc. These are also causing, since there is a rise in temperature, I'll tell you how much it is, how much it has been in from 1960 to 2000s, and you can scale up and see how fast we are going. This has resulted in melting of polar ice caps that would then raise the water level across the globe. So the major cause of worry is the cities that exist near the shoreline of the countries will be the first to get flooded and become non-livable. So in this entire phenomena, if you have seen earlier, our carbon dioxide that we are supposed to produce, that is present here, is the major contributor of global warming. Not to say that only transportation sector causes this. So let's look at this a pictorial graph for you. If I draw that this is the 100% of the emissions, 100% of the carbon dioxide emissions that is happening across the globe. Then if I take this small chunk from here to here, this one, this would be attributed to residentials. That means if we are simply living, we do release carbon dioxide and we amount to 19% of the carbon dioxide. The second chunk is roughly a little small. This would be due to commercial activities, which is 15%. That would amount your offices, your small shops. Yeah. Now the two major contributors of this would be these two. That is, number one, we'll have industrial sector bringing their fair share, that is 34%, and you have transportation sector contributing 32% of the overall carbon dioxide being produced from the world. So since we can't stop living, we need small shops to work and we need industries to produce materials to make our life better. The first and the foremost thing that we can curb is we can take care of transportation. So we can use public transport, we can prefer metros, buses, we can use cycles, we can use walkways, maybe urban planning can be done better so that offices are nearby residences, and then we move on to a separate city altogether to make more, so we avoid congestion, so we have less amount of traffic and so on and so forth. So people have thought about it a lot and they have come up with this, that the solutions need to happen in parallel. We need to have public transport adoption, we need to have better infrastructure, we need to use less personal vehicles of IC engines, which if people still need to use, we need to give them alternatives. Those alternatives we are going to discuss in this entire series. So there are multiple solutions. So if we can target 32%, it would be much beneficial towards the growth or the betterment of the human life. Second thing, if we do a trajectory of this, the relation between emission of carbon dioxide with these four categories, the trend would be in such a way that if, say, this is your growth trajectory of residentials, commercial will be slightly lower than this, industrial will grow up, it will have much more quantity, and the transportation sector tends to very closely follow the growth of industrial sector. So just for reference, if I plot this graph, don't take it as say actual values, but if let me reduce this a little bit. So that later if I have to give you the PDF, you won't have any problem. So if I look at it, we'll call this is your years on x-axis, and this is carbon dioxide emission in million metric tons on y-axis. Okay, let me further shorten it down a little bit, resize it so it looks neat and presentable, and yeah, okay. So this is a rough estimation of how the carbon dioxide emission has grown. All of this resulted in an increment of global temperature by 0.33 degrees Celsius only in 20 years, that is from 1971 to 1991. I hope you are understanding the severity of this situation. We have increased in just 20 years of industrialization. We have actually 100 years of industrialization, but we took up a peak from 1970s when we started aerospace, space travels picked up pace, industrialization picked up, Japanese country was building back up, Russia was getting up on its feet, US was developing very fast, UK was there, India was finding its footing, wars were happening, local wars were taking place like amongst country, not world war, but yeah, the wars were there. All of this resulted in a rise of 0.33 degree Celsius. And the problem is, if we reach 1.2 degree Celsius rise in total, the melting of the ice caps will be completed. It will flood up the entire coastal regions. Okay. So now moving on to the third aspect. We'll begin with the final one, which is petroleum reserves. Now obviously, if you're going to use IC engine for combustion and transportation, obviously there has to be some amount, because currently the petroleum reserves that we are using are all because of the fossils that had been there in the Earth's crust and pressurized for millions of years, which results in an oil which we can refine and use at various categories. Like we get kerosene, we get diesel, we get petroleum, we get then we refine it to engine oils, brake oils, lubricants, so on and so forth. Okay, so all because of fossil fuels. So, but it has come to a notice that there is only so much to go around that we can use. So it's not an endless supply. So one of the things that we need to understand is there is a ratio called as R by P ratio, which denotes that the number of years the reserve would last if the production, that means we are telling about consumption, were to continue at its current rate. But I hope you are able to understand that we have just seen the rate of consumption. If the sector is growing and producing more carbon dioxide, definitely it is burning more energy. So the R by P ratio that we are calculating, say today, and we may say that okay, for next 10 years we'll have oil, but since we are going to develop, we are going to use more, population is going to grow, more people are going to buy cars, more energy would be required to sustain. We may very well be well within the 5 years of time before the supply of our reserves is completely depleted. Just in perspective, if I tell you, let's look at some data. If you talk about North America, then we have South and Central America. Then we'll talk about, let's see, Europe, let's see, Africa, let's see, we have Middle East, then we have our Russia, then finally we have Asia Pacific region. So we possessed, what all of us have is 8.5 billion tons of reserves. North America had. South and Central America had 13.6 billion. Europe has merely 2.5. Africa has 10. Middle East has 92.5. Then Russia has 9.0 and Asia has 6.0. Now you can understand from the population point in Asia Pacific, we have India and China. So we have major consumer of Asia Pacific. Now let's see how long these reserves will last. So for America, just 8.5 will last around 13.8 years. For South and Central America, this reserve will last for 39 years. This is basically the RP ratio for these countries. For Britain, that is Europe, entire Europe will have 7.7. For Africa, it will last 26.8. For Middle East, it will be the 83.6. Then we have 22.7 for Russia and 15.9 for Asia Pacific. Now this is, let me write, this is a discovered oil reserves. But then we also have undiscovered. That for America is 19.8 billion tons, 14.9 billion tons, 3.0, 9.7, 31.2 billion. We got 3.0 for Europe. For Middle East, we'll have 31.8. For Africa, we have 9.7. Sorry, it was correct. Russia, we get 15.7. In Asia, we have only 4.2. Now you would say, okay, why do we have? See, if you see from this picture now, Middle East has no hurry to take part in the development of this because they are controlling the global supply chain of oil reserves, and that's why we had a energy crisis in the year 1970s to 1980s. But if you see the growth of Asia Pacific will be severely hindered because we don't have much undiscovered oils, and America can still go on for a longer amount of time. But the thing that's important to highlight is, from this, it is extremely expensive to get oils, to get oil from these reserves. That means they are either in a very high pressure zone, that is like very deep under the sea, so it will cost us a lot more to get them and extract them. Okay, so since this makes it clear that we are having a high energy factor of global warming, and then we don't have an unlimited supply of petroleum reserves, and then we are also looking at air pollution, smog and acid rain coming up. Many adverse effects are being seen. We need to have a solution towards it. So the first target that was taken to be addressed was the transportation sector, specifically our own vehicles. Okay, so that would be it for today's lecture. So let's summarize. So we got 3 reasons: air pollution, global warming, and limited petroleum reserves, of which if we see the in the major sector of global warming, the major sectors which contribute to global warming will involve transportation and industrial sectors. They are also the ones who are consuming the most amount of energy. To get energy, we don't have an unlimited supply of petroleum. You can see from the data that there is very limited. So the world has gracefully realized this and have started taking steps. But you will be very, very shocked to know when you understand the history of it, that it is not just the advent of this crisis that we started to do research and development and thought about the solutions towards this. We'll look at it in the section of history that will start in next lecture. Thank you.